right, everybody, welcome. It's another great edition of Rock Talk, and I gotta tell you, every show gets better. And here's some Rock Talk trivia for you. Of all the guests we've ever had, I've never gone and got a haircut beforehand to surprise my guests, although you've never met me with longer hair. Not like I had rock and roll, David Lee Roth kind of hair, but I got a haircut, and I said to the lady, I said, man, I look like it's the first day of school. Give me a haircut so I don't look like I just had a haircut. And that's what you did. But anyway, we're here at the Kingston Collection, Plymouth Rock TV Octane Media Studios. And I got to tell you, back in the day when I was on college radio, you know, there were incredible bands. Boston was just such an incredible place for music. And the Fuegos, one of those bands that we would play on the radio for college radio all the time. And we have the drummer, Woody Giessmann, who is here. And thank you so much for coming in.
It's good to see you, John.
Yeah, thanks for being here. And Ralph Jaccodine came on, and he's a longtime mutual friend of both of ours. Fantastic guy, and he just had incredible stories, one after another, of really cool things. And he brought up what you were doing, and I was floored. And seeing like your heroes in person and seeing like the bands that you've seen and, you know, when I was in college, and then to see how you've grown up, you know, and now you're a clinical psychologist or,
I'm an addiction specialist, licensed addiction specialist.
Okay. Massachusetts. And we're going to talk about this great event that they have, or production that we'll talk about in the, you know, later part of the show. But being in the rock and roll business, you had your own experience with addiction, correct?
I've been in recovery since 1990.
Wow. Okay.
35 years.
And were you working yourself out of that when you were in the band, or did it happen afterwards, or?
So I was living in Los Angeles.
Okay.
And, we had just finished a tour for our third album, and we were starting to work on the pre-production for our fourth album. And I believe at that time I was the only member living in LA. Most of us were living kind of spread out.
Okay.
On the East Coast.
Yeah.
But it was at that time that I ran into a musician friend of mine in LA, first name Peter, last initial C.
Yep.
And an amazing musician.
Yeah.
Who said, you know, Woody, I think there's something going on here. I think you need help.
Okay.
And it's interesting, and I talk at length about this in my book.
So, yeah, this guy, let me tell you, author, clinical, what's the official title of the clinical?
I'm a addiction specialist.
Musician, entrepreneur, we'll throw that off, right? You do all these things, and so, you know, I have a million questions as it relates to it, but in your situation, did it get so out of control, or was it just like you recognized?
It's tough, man. We've cast a lot of our heroes. As you know, I toured with Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, and Tom himself, and also Lynch, the drummer for the Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, approached me one time and he said, Woody, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine.
What was your drug of choice, or was it?
Oh, whatever yeah. I mean, I started at a very young age of 14 with alcohol and smoking weed.
It wasn't, and this sounds like just sort of the thing that 14-year-old would say, everybody's doing it. I mean, back then in the music business, you almost expected that. Right.
Well, you know, that's the national average of first exposure to substance use is currently for the age of 14 is actually kind of due to the internet. It's looking more like the age of 12 that people are exposed to and have access to substances.
Right.
But I mean, you know, and that's in my book as well.
Yep.
The whole thing. My book is called A Life of Recovery and Breaking the Chains of Addiction. I've always made it a part of my mission to help people understand that addiction or substance use is treatable, and that it's not people who struggle with substance use probably make a lot of enemies because they really upset family members and friends and bosses and and siblings and partners. But they're not bad people. They're sick people who need help.
That's right.
And I feel that, years ago, Dr. Ann Alonso, who was one of my mentors, she's the head of the Advancement of Psychotherapy, Master General. She really influenced my life. And she said, Woody, you need to become comfortable not only being the voice of addiction, but the face of recovery. And that's who I feel I am.
Yeah. And you now have Right Turn, which is a facility. Is it a facility or a center?
I mean, that's interesting. And Ralph Jaccodine is a part of this story that 21 years ago, back in 2003, I established my first nonprofit, a 501c3 charitable nonprofit, called it Right Turn. And it was to provide comprehensive treatment for people who needed help. And a lot of this is discussed in my book as well, that my medical director, who is one of my dearest friends, Dr. Albanese, he and Ed Kansian, Dr. Kansian, wrote the hypotheses for self-medication, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's really what I feel is important to me, not to just look at the substance use, but the underlying issue of what's really going on. Are they self-medicating something? Are they depressed? Do they have anxiety? Or are they medicating, ADHD or trauma? Trauma. Can't say enough about trauma.
Yeah. And it's, I think the stigma, because it's a behavioral thing, but it stems from something else, where escape, you want to get away from your day or running from a problem or something like that. And that generally, when people letting self, or just like, read a book but how to heal myself. They're treating just getting off the drugs or alcohol or whatever, and they're not treating why they're doing that to begin with.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And, years ago when I first, over 20 years ago, when I left Cambridge Hospital to open up Right Turn, I actually worked for the Department of Mental Health at that time as well for several years. But I opened up Right Turn with the goal of it being a place of, we celebrate creativity, we celebrate people being their creative selves and being true to themselves. And it's not uncommon that when people get into substance use and addictions, they leave a part of themselves behind,
Yeah.
I would have to say that would be me. 35 years ago, I left a part of me behind.
Of recent, there's been a lot of great biopics, like the Rocket Man, Elton John movie and the Queen movie, and you see these people who were struggling with addictions and things. And I thought the Rocket Man did a great job of sort of doing the therapy, and the work throughout the movie. How much of it played a role that you were in a successful band? Were you traveling and like the adrenaline of being on stage? Was that a part of it? I don't know how any of these musicians stay alive. I mean, just like never mind the drugs. Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a really good question. And I can speak to a couple of times.
Yeah.
A number of times, again, I had people like Stan Lynch or Bruce Springsteen's drummer was someone who I developed a relationship, Max Weinberg, who said, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, sure, I'm fine. And I wasn't ready to say, no, I need help.
Right.
But back to your question.
All these drummers, too. Like Keith Moon and all these guys, the drummer never survived. But
that's another story, right? But, there was a time when I was on stage at Madison Square Garden, performing with the Del Fuegos and Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. And, I'm on stage at the coolest place in the history of music, the most famous stage. And the whole experience of being there was just such an amazing thing. And right in the middle of the performance, my mind went to, oh, geez, if I could get off the stage, I could get back to my dressing room because I have some things there that I need to. And so my addiction robbed me of the experience. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
robbed me of the experience of being in the moment, on stage, being where I wanted to be.
Right.
Music is such a big part of me. It's a part of my heart and my soul. It always has been.
Are you spiritual? And the reason I ask is because I think to myself, your best part of your life is what you're doing now. I'm a spiritual guy. I think that God puts you through something to get you to where you are. And like you're living out your purpose and you're doing remarkable things. And I was just in awe reading everything about you. You're leaving this place so much better than you showed up. And that's so impressive. But you don't get there unless you have gone through the shit.
Yeah.
Right? And I believe that that's a spiritual thing. Like your path is your path.
Someone just sent me a comment after reading my book. They said, not only have you been through all of the addiction into recovery, but you make you're a wonderful therapist because of what you've been through.
Right.
And I feel very grateful for that,
And not to dwell on that, but I almost feel like it's also a good thing. And I know Alcoholics Anonymous, and part of their thing is a higher power, right? Connecting to a higher power, and just knowing that it takes some of the shame and sting away when you go, you know what? I had to go through it so I can help somebody else. Yeah. Because if you didn't, and you're just like this clean, white bread kid from Kansas with no experience, like what do you know?
Well, I honor anyone's spiritual or religious beliefs. Myself, I grew up in Kansas among the Native American Indian, where my mother was the director of a church choir, so I spent a lot of time in church. But my heart and my soul was with the Native American beliefs of Mother Nature. It is, it's not a Christian thing. It was that Mother Nature was the power greater than myself, and I should pay attention to what Mother Nature is teaching me.
Yeah.
But obviously a lot of the language from 12-step recovery was borrowed from Christianity, and sometimes that scares people away. I focus on the science, man. The first article in the 12-step recovery big book was written by a doctor. It was a doctor. It's called The Doctor's Opinion in 1935. And he talks about the fact that addiction or alcoholism is some kind of a physical manifestation or an allergy. My book, I take that a step further, and I update it to where we are now, So, and Carl Jung also was a part of the, the Bill W. Dr. Bob team to create the 12-step philosophy. But Carl Jung said 6 months before he died, he wrote a letter to Dr. Bob and said, I've never said this because I'm a man of science and medicine, but I do believe that there's a spiritual connection for a solution for people who need to get well. So I believe that, and I'm big into, meditation, and I'm big into wellness
And I think it all comes from the same bucket. And, when you're in that meditative state, whatever you decide to call it. But I think that I really do think that there's this self-hatred that we get into, and we carry a lot of shame and disappointment and guilt, or we're carrying the trauma. And if we can look at our lives like a movie script, right? The best movies have the craziest stories. Yet when it's our own life, we just think that it's just attacking us, as opposed to we're really living something interesting, and we have to go through things to help others, and love being the common denominator. Like you're offering that to so many people who need help because they're stigmatized, or they've pissed off everybody, because that's what ultimately I think that addiction is like you're thinking of your selfishness, right? Because you just got to feed that, and then you turn around and you push so many people away. Who are the type of people that you see nowadays coming? Because you deal with creatives, a lot of creative people being in the music business. But are you everybody, anyone?
I mean, that's always been a part of my, my approach. Way back as early as like 3 decades ago when I worked at Cambridge Health Alliance, Cambridge Hospital under Dr. Albanese. He allowed me to use my medical director, who encouraged me to use music and art as a therapy, to increase the brain activity around dopamine and serotonin and help working from the inside out, helping people start to function better and overcome the serious illness or disease of addiction, and trauma as well. Majority of the people that I work with have had a lot of trauma, myself included. And trauma is not what happened to you, it's what happened inside you. And so my goal is to use music and arts and kindness and spiritual beliefs. Yes, being true to your authentic self, okay, and going back and picking at the pieces and moving forward in life to be your better self, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And I'm going to switch gears a little bit because this might be one of those.
Yeah, I don't know if this is an interview or psychoanalysis.
No, I get free therapy. This is how I get free. Or is this free therapy? Oh, yes. You take Blue Cross or Blue Sheet. I have Harvard Pilgrim, I think. But you hear this a lot where people will say bands or creative people wouldn't have been that way if not for the like they wouldn't have been funny. A comedian wouldn't have been funny. I know you're working with comedians like Tony B and Boston comedy scene, Steve Sweeney, Lenny Clark. I mean, the list goes on and on. People who have struggled, with drug addiction, alcoholism. And then you can go down the list of like right to the Beatles where their creativity came, Brian Wilson, came from that. And would they have been that way without it? And do a lot of those creative people feel like they would lose that edge without the stimulant or the drug?
Okay. Well, not to dwell on this, but I really do have a belief system based on science.
Okay.
That there is a creative gene, the DRD4 dopamine receiver, that is present in about 10% of the population, which we view as creative people.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, it puts them at higher risk for substance use and addiction or misuse or abuse.
What does that gene do? Like, does it make your brain?
It's an impulsive. It's a dopamine receiver.
Okay.
So it's kind of a risk-taking thing where you dare to be different.
Okay. Yeah.
Like my wife, for example, she's not a Da Vinci type of person. That's where they discovered the DRD4 dopamine was through Da Vinci. She cannot pick up a guitar and play a guitar to save her life. Me, I'm a Da Vinci. I can sit at the piano, pick up a guitar, sit at a drum set, write a song.
Were you always that way from being a little kid? Were you born that way?
Baby, I was born that way. That Lady Gaga was right.
Lady Giessmann.
Yeah. But, and a lot of the people who have always reached out to help me, Chuck, Dusty from my first tour with ZZ Top, first national type of exposure. The Fuegos played in the Rat Skiller on a Friday night. Mm-hmm. And on Saturday night, we were playing Nassau Coliseum with the ZZ Top. That'll rip your head off.
Jeez.
And of course, after the show, I was drinking madly, going, I've got to rethink what I'm doing here. I'm playing in this little.
Were the rest of the band like you, or were they going like Woody, man, or were you sharing in that experience with just being young, that age? You're experiencing.
Well, I don't want to speak on behalf of the other guys, but I was attracted to the band because they knew how to party like that.
Okay, sure, yeah.
But there were people along the way, like Dusty, the bass player for ZZ Top, who approached me one time and he put his hand on my shoulder and he said, "You know what? You're going to be okay." Because I was gearing up. I was I'd already lit in the fuse, and my addiction was starting to take off in ways that, and you said it before, you alluded to the fact that there was a lot of travel,
You're lonely at that.
Well, it's kind of my buddy Flea told me, once, being a musician on the road is kind of like having the flu for 22 hours a day. Then you go on stage and you feel great. And then when you walk off stage, you're back to having the flu again. And I used to medicate myself. I would show up at airports early enough to get go to the bar and pay the guy. I know it's 7:00 in the morning, but can you just pour me a Bloody Mary, please? Because we would fly someplace. So I would have to take go to an interview, go to a sound check, and then go do a show and then party all night. Yeah. And the thing is, man, is that, now that weed is decriminalized and more a part of my daily conversation, and we're exploring the benefits of weed, of cannabis. I know that for me, as someone who used it, and never even really liked it, Chuck, I never liked weed, but I smoked it every day.
Yeah.
Because it numbed my pain. And I think that goes back to your point. Yeah. That we were constantly being driven and no breaks,
This is going to be, I don't say controversial, but because I have a lot of friends who are alcoholics and they smoke a lot of weed they use cannabis.
90% of people who smoke marijuana are probably not going to have a problem with it.
Okay.
They're not going to experience addiction. They're not going to, it's the 10% that I'm concerned about. The 10% that show up in my office who have had substance-induced psychosis from smoking this powerful high level of THC.
Yeah.
And maybe they had a previous history, family history, or genetic predisposition to a psychotic disorder, or, this is why I like talking to doctors.
Yeah.
To say, before you diagnose this person with schizophrenia, let's get the cannabis out of their system. They may look like they have schizophrenia. I don't know if you knew this about me, but for the 7 years, Governor Charlie Baker appointed me to the Board of Registry of Medicine. And I was the one non-physician on the board. I was sitting with a bunch of, all my colleagues were psychiatrists and medical professionals, amazing people, but they would turn to me because I would have to have conversations with doctors about their prescribing, about their understanding of addiction, and that goes back to my book as well, Chuck. I want to bring the knowledge from 1939 was when it was published. One of the first documents and understandings of substance use, abuse, dependency, etc., and bring it forward to where we are now. In my book, to say, now we understand addiction. We know what it looks like. We have scans that we can actually map out the functions of the brain and the effects of addiction. If you look at the brain under the influence of marijuana, it lights up the whole brain,
That's right.
And then after the marijuana wears off, the brain goes dark, which means, I better get high again to get the brain active with it, and that's starting the cycle of abuse and dependency, and a lot of people say, hey, it's just marijuana. It's not addictive. Well, yes, it is.
Yeah.
It hardens certain neural pathways in the brain that may lead, and I'm going to testify here, that I started off with marijuana and alcohol, and after I changed my brain neuroplasticity with those substances, I graduated into harder stuff.
The gateway.
The gate
is what they say. And I know that that's like a kind of a bullshit thing, but I think that you seek, if you're addicted to sex or if you're addicted to anything, you want more of it because your body just becomes used to it. And I had a minor argument with somebody on 4th of July, and I hope they don't see this, and they probably will. But they're in the pharmaceutical business, and we were doing a health show for a long time, and we did a whole thing on natural remedies, and I went down that rabbit hole of like big pharma coming in, with your Native American ties, how much natural remedies are used, and I wonder how much big pharma obviously contributed to where we are with the heroin and fentanyl and the addictions to Vicodin and opioids and stuff like that. But it's scary now because people can just take something and die. As a father, a kid who's in a band who's 20, I just get nervous that it's one thing. But what about big pharma? How has that been? Because you're dancing in that community, or the medical community, as well as the addiction. Like, do they hold on your responsibility?
Well, let me break this down, because we had an epidemic back in the 80s, which I lived through gratefully, cocaine and crack, etc. And then in the 90s, it gravitated towards OxyContin and opioids, right? And in the 2000s, early 2000s, the epidemic continued. Yeah. Currently, we're looking at an epidemic, which I've been trying to help people understand. Why are all these people in tents down by Boston Medical Center? Yeah. And I'm saying, they're saying throw them in jail because they're criminals. I'm saying, no, they're sick people who need help, and they're being subjected to, the street name is Trank. It's a pharmaceutical combination of different drugs. It's a polysubstance epidemic. You put tranquilizers with fentanyl, with benzodiazepines, with methamphetamine. You're combining and making a cocktail of something that's very cheap, very quick. It's so powerful that it changes the brain chemistry almost immediately. And you see people in various, some people describe it as they look like zombies.
Yeah, Walking Dead. Yeah.
Right? Right.
Yeah.
And it's very disrespectful, but what's more disrespectful to me is to hear politicians say we should, we should just throw them all in jail and scoop them up. Because, and I had to get on a radio show not too long ago with a politician who said, we should just, arrest them all, get them off the streets. And I had to explain to them, no, we're looking at another epidemic that is just barely getting started. This came through the Harvard School of Medicine Treating Addictions Conference. This isn't something that I've made up. There's honest to goodness research, and Dr. Albanese is one of the leaders of that. He's a Harvard addictionologist and psychiatrist who doing the research on these things. We're looking at great possibilities. I want to go back to something you said earlier, because I don't want anyone to think that I don't believe that medications are needed. They are needed sometimes. I am not aggressive with medications. It's not always my first line of defense. But sometimes we need to use medications for certain things, whether that's, a mood stabilizer or antidepressant type of thing, or whatever the medication is. Years ago, I was one of the first people to advocate for medication-assisted treatment with medications like naltrexone, buprenorphine, to help people with cravings so that they had a chance of getting off into sobriety, And it was funny because a lot of people said, why are you prescribing drugs? And I said, please listen to me. I'm prescribing medications.
Yeah.
We're using the medications that the evidence shows provide people with a shot at getting into recovery.
Well, if your blood is low on iron, you take iron, right? So you need to offset what your natural imbalance might be. So if you need to do something to get you back on the homeostasis or the even keel, That makes sense.
Well, if we can deal with the cravings and that impulsivity of the addiction,
Yeah.
it gives their brain a chance to fight back and get well again. I'm overly simplifying that.
I got to tell you, you've elevated our show of the intelligence quite a bit. The other coolest part of my day is that you said my friend Flea Oak. And I was like, wow, this is a cool show.
Yeah, his daughter and my son went to school together.
Really?
In L.A., yeah.
Wow. And you see.
And Chad Smith is a dear friend of mine. Anytime I call Chad and say, hey, I'm doing this is with bringing Ralph Jaccodine back in the picture. I did shows with Alice Cooper, with, Chuck Clavel, with Warren Haynes.
The greatest thing I ever saw.
Scott would always come to help
with Chad. The greatest thing was with him and Will Ferrell, how they are the twins, separated somehow, and just
it's true. And he'll walk to an airport and someone will think that he's
unbelievable. I mean, it's wild, and seeing them do that drum off. I don't know, Will Ferrell plays the drums or whatever, but man, it's some of these bands.
Chad is a monster. Yeah, I did a 6-hour rehearsal and a 2-hour show with Chad. 2 drummers, drum talk, and he is a monster. He's one of the.
Who's the best drummer you've ever seen? Aside for yourself, I'll always say that.
Well, I'm going to date myself.
Okay.
Thank you. Go away. I saw Buddy Rich, man.
Wow.
Why?
That's impressive. Yeah.
Right?
Yep. That's
another one of my big time favorites. It was John Blackwell, who came to Boston to do a fundraiser with Chad Smith, and we had a drum thing, and he played with Prince. John Blackwell was just this amazing drummer.
What about the guy? You can tell I have ADB. I'm all over the place, right? But Rick Allen from Def Leppard, is that his name, right?
Yeah.
One arm. Like what he does, amazing, right? And I was trying to talk to my son, like he's got one arm, he's a drummer. He's like, no, I'm like, Chris, you got to watch these videos. And I remember seeing them the Hysteria tour, and that was their biggest album. He was one arm. I mean, it's just incredible, and the physical stamina that you guys had to go through. You almost needed stimulants. That's what I go back to when you think of musicians. It's almost like it was your 5-hour energy. You're like, there was nothing else like that. I don't know how you did it. Sometimes I don't feel like coming in here to just press play and record, and never mind you going out and having to just do that. That's like it.
Well, when it runs out, we supplement with other things.
Right. Well, I want to take a break, and I want to come back, and we'll talk more about like other artists and talk about Rock Bottom, which I think is one of the coolest things I've heard. And I just mentioned to you, I brought it up at a Rotary lunch, and I spoke. I got up in front, and then I sat down. The guy next to me goes, a musical comedy about drug addiction. Interesting. And I didn't engage him in it. And I go, was he thinking this was insulting to her? I didn't ask him, but I want to talk about, yeah. So we're going to take a break, and we're going to be right back, and hang with us. So much more to come. It's Rock Talk, everybody, on Plymouth Rock TV.
Oh, baby, what's going on? You don't laugh on the phone like you used to.
So we're back, everybody, and this is such a treat. Woody Giessmann, former drummer for the Del Fuegos and is it Embarrassments? Was that your first band? And
My art school band.
Yeah,
in Kansas.
You were in these bands. How did you came to Boston, right? You were in Wichita, Kansas. Came to Boston for school, or for?
So I truthfully, honestly, and it's in my book.
You can lie. I don't care.
No, I want to be honest. That I went on a 2-week whiskey bender in Kansas, and I came to on an Amtrak train on my way to Boston.
See, it was supposed to happen. You were supposed to go through this.
I had like $320 in my pocket, man.
Yeah.
And I was really drawn to Boston for the music, but I was also drawn to Boston for John Singer Sargent's, some of the painters of Boston, the New England painters. And I knew that Boston was where I wanted to be, but I kind of woke up on a train going, the hell did I do? I have no plan.
Mm.
And I
That's
arrived,
what your youth is supposed to be.
right.
Your 20s? Were you early 20s?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what it was. That's what the 20s is for. It's just to find yourself in, how did I get here?
Right.
Right? And so you come and then you're part of this band and you have some hits. I think I heard one of your songs played on the organ at Fenway Park one time.
I was there.
Really?
That was my friend Josh Cantor, the keyboardist for the Red Sox.
And I heard it's like when you're shopping for a car, then you start seeing that car everywhere.
Yeah.
When I knew you were coming on, I went to a Porch Fest show in Quincy. They were doing one of those everywhere. And I was like, I heard a Del Fuego song. I'm like, what's going on? It's like, have I been missing it? But it's like, it brings me back yesterday. We're at the beach, we're playing some music, and I'm like, just getting back in the feel of it. So you've been in that creative circle forever. How did you meet? Tell me how Rock Bottom began. And I know you had a relationship with Tony V, the comedian, who also has had his battles. But who did you meet first that this was sort of like?
So I was, let me
Tell me the story. Yeah.
with Rock Bottom. I was at my clinic, and I was preparing to do a group session with people, and I said, we're going to write a song today. We're going to write a song about our addiction, And, I kind of had that ongoing theme in my head for quite some time, and we would write these wonderful songs. I would pick up an acoustic guitar or sit at the piano. We would write these songs. Clients loved it. When I do drum circles, you can see their brains lighting up for the first time in sobriety without the aid of a mind-altering, mood-altering substance. It's music that moves them. I was sitting in at my clinic, and I kind of made this decision that there was this concept of writing a love story, writing a tragedy, but including comedy, because sometimes it's kind of like Spinal Tap, man. It's so the things that go on.
Right.
I mean, the idea that two people fall in love at a detox, it's funny to me. Yet they're looking for something to make themselves feel better, and the guy just wants to get lucky or something, or they both want to get lucky, but they also both are in search of love.
I met two people who fell deeply in love because both of them had their legs blown off in the Boston Marathon explosion. And if not for that event,
Yeah.
they're great. They're by their own voice, their love is the greatest thing that ever happened to them.
Yeah.
And so, I keep going back to like everything happens for a reason and just the beauty of it. And I even asked some people at some points, like, what's the worst thing that has ever happened to you that you can laugh about now? And, I'll tell you my story another time, but the idea of like what you're saying of it, especially with drugs and alcohol, your stories must be outrageous. So when you're hanging out with your friends from the past, you must be like, do you remember that night? And you're laughing about it. But it probably was, there's an element of pain there too. You're almost talking about a character you once were. When I think back to some of your most embarrassing times, which happened.
And I think that you're touching on something there, Chuck, in that Rock Bottom, the title Rock Bottom, to me, speaks about the ultimate pain. It speaks to the ultimate pain of hitting rock bottom where there's no place to go but hopefully up. And as my buddy Ronnie would say, it's better to be seen than viewed,
Right? Yeah.
The alternative of being is not desirable,
Right.
you know. But rock bottom for me represents a point of, and this is the message that I want to send, that recovery is possible. Recovery can happen.
You know, and you're in rock bottom when you're in rock bottom. I mean, does somebody do you recognize it? Did you recognize it in yourself, or when people come in for treatment, where you're talking to them, counseling them, do they know they're in the moment?
Yeah.
When they're in the moment.
Well, I mean, I believe subconsciously anyone who's ready to be ready to embrace their recovery knows,
Because you can't be
deep down inside that they're ready to, that they know that something's wrong and that they need to change, that they can't afford to not do something. And so getting back to the idea of rock bottom, it's a point where people have this opportunity to recreate themselves, to acknowledge the pain that has taken them to this low place in their life. And I just want to, that's some of the music in rock bottom echoes the faith. Now, let me just mention that when I had this concept of putting together a addiction with a love story as a tragedy, because people die, but also as a comedy, I picked up the phone and I made 2 phone calls. The first one was to my buddy Simon Kirke. He's the drummer for Bad Company and Freeze, being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Simon and I had history, man. He actually narrated my book, so if you order the audio version, is Simon reading it for me. But I called Simon and I said, you know, we have an opportunity to write a song, and it's a love story, you know, and Simon and I both are hopeless romantics. He's such a wonderful songwriter. You know, I had started writing some songs, and he had some ideas about my songs. And he, you know, I could feed him, hey, can we write something about this, that, or the other? And Simon would just latch onto it. The second call that I made, almost, if it were the second, it may have been the first, was I called Tony V, the comedian. And both Tony V and Simon Kirke are people who I've had 20-year relationships with. They've always come out in the name of recovery to do something to celebrate recovery, you know. And Simon is like, tell me where you want me and I'll be there. You know, when I said, I'm bringing Alice Cooper in, can you please show up? He's like, I am there, you know. With Tony, I said, we need to raise some money for people who need help, who don't have the resources or the insurance, or they've hit rock bottom and they need help. Let's just raise some money for them and we'll put them in my clinic. And I've had wonderful people like Winston Marsalis come forward and say, let me pay for this guy. Yeah. Let me fly this guy in from New Orleans. I've flown a number of people in from New Orleans. That's the heart of American music, is New Orleans, man.
Right.
You know? And in fact, you know, there was a time where Trombone Shorty, the amazing musician from New Orleans, came to Boston, and I had the opportunity to sit down and play drums with him, man, completely unrehearsed in front of a full sold-out audience, man. We went nuts with Glenn David Andrews and I think Todd Rundgren's drummer Cassine was on bass. Just some amazing music. Oh, and G.E. Smith was on guitar. You know, what an evening.
This is great for me because you're just such a great energy. You've got these great, we need to do like 5 of these shows because it's just so and I bet you're that type of guy too, that just new stories, you just can go back to that file cabinet and you can just, something will come up that'll just be another gem.
I appreciate you, and I appreciate your energy and what you're doing here. The whole thing for me with Rock Bottom was to not only broadcast that addiction is a real thing,
Yep.
that we need to be able to talk about it, that it's a treatable thing. People can get better, you know. But I also wanted to use it as an opportunity for people in recovery to audition for it. To, you know, maybe they've never had a shot at doing something that meant that much to, you know, that meant something to them. So they could be true to their authentic self and discover their voice, discover their talent, and be a part of, you know, I mean, here's the thing, Joe. The opposite of addiction is connection. And that is what rock bottom is. It's a place for people to come to feel connected. Either they're on stage, connecting with their fellow actors, singing these wonderful songs that Simon and I have been. It's a gift, man. I have no idea. When you hear the songs, you know, it's. I was heavily influenced by Jesus Christ Superstar, which a great score.
Right.
You know, and I did that production years ago, and I still kind of use that as, you know, and then it influences me to, you know, inspires me to make rock bottom what I think it needs to be, you know.
So tell me just what the pitch is on the rock bottom in terms of like there's a cast, right? So what are you picturing it to be? Maybe a traveling show, something like a Broadway, because you get some big names attached to this, you know, like, you know, Tom Hamilton from Aerosmith and, you know, Daryl McDaniel from Run DMC. And I'm sure as this grows, more and more people are going to just sort of say, Barry Goudreau. I mean, it's incredible, right? And so they're not going to be in they're contributing to it.
We're doing the soundtrack.
The soundtrack, right.
And the soundtrack will be, you know, as we speak,
Yep.
is still under development, but it's getting very close to a finished soundtrack, much like Jesus Christ Superstar.
When is this?
The soundtrack was released before it sort of the stage and or it became a movie as well, right? And people fell in love with the music of Jesus Christ Superstar,
Right.
Because the story is what the story is, you know? Right. I feel that people are going to fall in love with rock bottom because it's a very, you know, there's this kind of beautiful thread that tells the story of, you know, going from, you know, this initial kind of love story through this awful period where addiction is, and that was one of the things that Simon and Tony and I continue to say is we've got to keep this real. It's got to be real.
How ugly will it get?
You know what? You're gonna have to come and see.
Well, I will.
But I'm gonna give you a little bit. There was a point where I looked at Simon and I looked at Tony, and we were writing the story, and I said, someone's got to die, because that's what happens. We have overdoses every day in America and around the world. Someone's going to die. We have to keep this real, you know.
But even still, living can be worse than death in some of these scenarios where they're just hopeless and they're living in that life sentence of losing their kids or their job or their who they were. And like you talk about, like the saddest thing, I might even get, you know, emotional thinking about it, like driving up Molina Cass or whatever, and seeing those were, you know, that wasn't them at one point in their life. They had dreams and they had friends and family, and now they're just, I just think to myself, that's almost worse than death. And that's why I say, like, in some circumstances, we have a lot of people on that talk about, oh, they're doing a fundraiser, come to this golf course, we're going to raise money. And I'm always thinking, if you don't take somebody's breath away with why you're doing it, and we've seen so much in that world, like Red Hot Chili Peppers was a very example, Under the Bridge, like, you know, you could feel that song like a heroin addict or something like that. But
yeah, Anthony and I got sober together back in 1990.
God, you're incredible. Like how that band even survived. I mean, you know,
Well, we were label mates, man.
yeah,
You know,
wow,
not only did my son go to school with Flea's daughter, but we were both on Warner Brothers at the same time.
yeah.
So we would constantly be running into each other in different ways. But I'm glad that Anthony has embraced his recovery, because it's a very powerful.
Did they even have that downtime where they were like Aerosmith? I know, which is the unique about the Run DMC scenario, because they kind of brought them back to life. I mean, Aerosmith kind of fell off a little bit, and then the Walk This Way came, and then that propelled them into their next phase, and they were able to have a second life, so to speak. But did the Chili Peppers ever have that, like where they were down, like gone for a while?
I really couldn't speak to that.
Yeah,
I really couldn't say.
yeah.
You know?
Like I think your gender and also your patient client confidentiality. Not that they really.
Well, I just want to be respectful. I know that Anthony's very open and public, as I am, about my recovery. You know, and but I don't want to speak for him. Of
course, yeah.
You know. But I want to, getting back to rock bottom. You know, it's kind of been this beautiful thing that we have established a 501c3 charitable nonprofit. And for your viewers, if they want to go to rockbottom.band, they can learn more about what the nonprofit is doing and how you can be a part of it, how you can contribute. You know, maybe you are someone who's watching this who has a great voice and wants to audition, you know. So keep your eyes and ears peeled, waiting for the announcements to come. I mentioned to you earlier that Ernie Bach Jr. is someone who's supported me for 2 decades, man. And he has offered to do an event at his house to help us raise money, so that we can get this thing into production and on stage. And obviously, you know, Ernie loves music, man. He's a musician himself. Mm-hmm. And I've called him when I had, Chuck Berry in town. I called, Ernie and said, hey man, can you bring your band out and open up the show for us? You know?
You ever been in the Ernie and the Automatics? I know he's got that like all-star band that goes around. Did you play with them ever?
I never played with
Okay.
them, no. But they would show up, and I was always great. I'm very grateful for that they would.
Yeah, Music Drives. This is a great organization.
It's a great organization.
Music is so, like, I think you started it off how therapeutic it is, and I even talked to Ralph about Ralph Jaccodine. We recommend people go watch that full episode, but talking about the science of music frequency, and are they teaching that at Berklee of, like, I've heard music and healing and hurts breaking up cancer cells, like the power of sound.
Yeah, they actually had me present at Berklee with some researchers and neurologists who had evidence-based scans of the brain being stimulated by music.
Yes.
This is what jazz looks like. This is what classical music looks like. And I was asked to discuss, my approach of using music in a powerful way in a treatment program to help stimulate that brain back to health.
Well, Alzheimer's patients still use music from back in their healthy days. And even I was making light of like us playing the Del Fuegos at the beach this weekend, having a good time. But when I go back to that music of time in my life, it's like smelling the fresh cut grass, and it brings you to somewhere. And it could be a trigger, both good or bad, right? But like for me, it was a lot of just even preparation for this was a lot of good memories. But it definitely taps into where did that come from? I just didn't hear a song and then, you'd have to go back. But I suppose that could be the problem with food causes of addiction too. It's like the trauma could be just like a smell can set you off, or yeah.
Well, and also being a part of the community, a recovery community like Rock Bottom, I think I'm already speaking to musicians who want to be a part of it. They're in recovery. They're great musicians, and they want an opportunity to come together and be a part of this. And we're going to need people to come in, the musicians and the actors and the singers and the dancers. It's going to be a really, wild opportunity for creative people to take a chance. And, I always say to my clients, hey, man, when was the last time you finished something that you started? And you wanted to go on, do this or, go on stage or sit at a piano and learn how to play. Well, let's take a chance.
And it'll make you keep going when you don't feel like it, because you know it'll have, there's something deeper to it. There's an impact and everything else. Woody, there are people watching right now that are maybe parents who don't know how to reach their kid. And you hear all the sad stories all the time of people suffering in addiction who, it's not like getting cancer where you're like, I got to go to the doctor. I mean, you're treating them as hard. You got to want to do it almost. But what's the first thing that can be done when somebody doesn't want the help? Because of people that love them, parents, and what if kind of advice can you give them to get the ball roll? I mean, like, there's no simple solution.
Well, it can be simple. I know that it's difficult, and that family members, parents, siblings, partners can be very angry at the person for because they're hopeless in the throes of addiction. I believe that people can get well. I have 3 decades of experience helping people, musicians and just anyone. I've been doing intervention work with families and rock bands and, comedians, etc. for 3 decades. And I'm very easily reached through my website, which is recoverigor.life. So, and my email address is simply woody@recoveryour.life. If someone needs help, help. It works. Treatment works. Help works. But let's be clear. Let's not focus on the anger and the addiction. Let's focus on what is the underlying issue or co-occurring underlying illness that needs to be addressed. Let's put it all together. It has to be done with love. It has to be done in a respectful way. I think that's why I've had such a wild success rate here with helping people who were very resistant, as you described, Chuck.
Yeah.
It's because I approach them and say, yep, I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to help you. Deep down inside that things are not going well. Let me help you. You tell me what it is. I hope you'll learn to trust me so you can actually open up and say, this is what I'm dealing with.
Right.
So people can reach me through my website. You can email me. If you want to join my family group, please email me and I will send you the Zoom invitation to join my bi-weekly family group. It's been running for 10 years now, man.
Wow.
And people, it's actually happening this.
So I don't want to gloss over that. So what is that more specifically? Is it a sort of an online community meetup kind of thing? Like, tell me what that is. Like,
Well, before the pandemic, we met in person.
Yeah.
20 people would show up to my group, but since the pandemic, we went into a Zoom. Making use of the technology, because there are people who. We had a guy from Ohio show up at our last session, Zooming in from New York, from all over the place. So anyone is welcome, but let's be clear. And this is the reason why I wrote my book, right? A Life of Recovery and Breaking the Chains of Addiction.
Right.
And you can go to woodygiessmannbooks.com to purchase the book. The reason why I wrote the book was because the family group said, Woody, you've been helping us for so long. Everything you teach us works because it's evidence-based practices.
Right.
It is not my opinion. It's I'm trying to help family members who feel broken because their son or daughter or they feel that they're broken. And I start with the family based on a little research, Chuck, that if the family makes a decision to get well, that there's a better outcome for their son or daughter who needs help. If the family can say, I love you, I'll do anything to help you, but I can't live this way anymore. and I'm going to work with Woody, and I'm going to get well.
Yeah.
Then the son or the daughter will say, wow, you know, you're sick. I'm sick. Let's all focus on getting well.
So the book is written for, because I'm again being the ignorant, the dude a ham here with you don't see somebody who's on the street picking the book up and leafing through it, right? Because they're not at that phase, but people that love them will be able to. Is that who it's written for? Is the people in the surrounding their ethos who can, or just they don't know what to do. They need help dealing with they don't want to give up.
I was kind of beaming the other day, before the 4th of July. I got a call from Dr. Mike Henry, who is the head of adult psychiatry at MGH. And he said, Woody, I just read your book. It's going to help so many people. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm like, really? And he said, yeah.
Hey, but you knew that in your heart.
Well, in my heart, I was just doing what my recovery told me I needed to do.
Yeah.
Show up, be of service to people, families, and individuals who need help. And just send the message, man, recovery is possible.
Right.
It's possible. It's not, and the book's not even really about me, but I do use my personal experiences. I lost my brother to this illness, to depression, active alcoholism, and suicide. And so that, to me, I had to, I've been in therapy for 19 years, man. But I always say a good therapist has a great therapist. But I feel that I'm turning this into a positive thing. And as my therapist says, you're still trying to save your brother. And I'm like, yes, I am. I'm trying to help people who don't have a voice. They can't find their voice, and they just want everything over with. And they're using drugs and alcohol or whatever, sex, gambling, whatever, to just to medicate themselves, try to feel better. Food, trying to, eating emotionally.
And I was going to ask, like, chemically, you're dealing with drugs and alcohol. Those are the two big kahunas there. But there's so many things that people can be, behaviors that they can't shake, that they feel they wish they could.
Addiction is addiction, and a drug is a drug.
Is it bad if somebody gives up alcohol, right, and then they turn into a marathon runner? Like, is there a problem with
It's
it?
actually predictable, Chuck.
Yeah, that they'll.
Myself, when I gave up substances, I got into Taekwondo, and I would work out hours every day.
And that manifests some.
I know I don't look like it now, but I'm a scary guy.
Oh, I know. I know. But I mean, but as a therapist, this was the root cause dealt with, or is addiction bad no matter what you're addicted to? If I'm addicted to working out, addicted to help feed the homeless, you know what I mean? It's a good addiction end game, but is there still a problem that you're addicted to it that you can't?
Let me be clear. Let me break this down for you just for a moment, Chuck. There's substance use, which could be even recreational. There's substance misuse, which is you're doing something in excess that could be dangerous to me. So from use to misuse to abuse to eventually dependency, And if you look at abuse or dependency, let's just use alcohol. If you're drinking alcohol to where it begins to interfere with your life on some way, and that could be the same with food or sex or whatever, right? Or exercise. If it's interfering with your life, then you need to be able to look at this in terms of you're impulsively doing something to try to make yourself feel better, but it's hurting you.
Because I think that, you have a can't miss situation where you have all these creative people coming in who are addicted to following through with success and their creativity, almost like they're transforming that, and this is going to be a huge hit.
Getting back to rock bottom, Chuck, I just want to say, man, I think that the music is so uplifting. It's a part of that spiritual thing for me. Working with Simon Kirke is such a gift. He's such an amazing man, a dear friend.
When will we hear the first track, the first cut?
Well, if you go to rockbottom.band,
Okay.
it'll be posted. We're talking about posting a few songs. So
Okay. All right.
get on your computer.
I did go there, and I was like, did I miss it? I wanted to hear somebody, but okay. So I'm excited for that. And we're going to put all those links up there. And certainly I think that people are going to want to reach out. They're going to want to see how they can involve themselves, their organization, their business, helping out the cause. And I'm sure that it's going to drive a lot of people to the issue. Whether or not they break addictions or they help somebody in their family, it's going to bring a lot of attention to it, I'm sure, in a good way. In a different way, right? Because it's...
Well, thank you for being a part of that, man, and helping us get the word out that help is available, you know? I'm going to be doing some book signings here in Boston. I'm going to Kansas in a couple of weeks and I'm going to sit down and play some piano songs that I've written about recovery. And then I'm going to, do a reading from the book and then sign copies. You can buy the book.
How often do you play music?
I play music every day.
Still.
Every day. 2 hours ago, I told my wife I'm going in for 30 minutes, and I went into my piano music room and played for 30 minutes, at least,
Do you play golf? Do you do other things? You said the taekwondo. What are some other... If you didn't have music, what would you have done?
That's funny, man, because I went out.
Well, you're a therapist, but I mean,
I am, but I played golf with Simon.
Okay. Yeah.
And,
Alice Cooper, big golfer.
great golfer.
Yeah. Right. Oh, yeah.
Last time I saw Alice, I said, "So how was your day, man?" He just growled for 2 hours out on stage, and I'm like, he goes, "Man, I golfed a 73."
Yeah.
I went golfing with Simon Kirke, and I was, very, very new to the game.
Yeah.
And through my recovery, I've learned how to play okay. But I swung, I hit this awful swing off of the tee, and Simon kind of put his hand on my shoulder, and he goes, "Woody, you're not good enough to be angry. Just learn how to play the game."
There is a zen to golf.
Be the ball, baby.
Be the ball. Let go. Like you have to be a little bit like...
It's a peaceful game. I love it.
You got to let the club do its thing. You got to let nature do its thing.
I will never be Simon Kirke, who can really drive that ball hundreds of yards. Not me. I'm 150 yards straight down.
You can't beat that. That's a great scramble player. You have somebody on your team at one of those best ball tournaments. Right. Hey, that's a huge get. Because somebody who because I'll get up there and I try to swing out of my shoes. Right, I'll hit it into the woods and whatever. But you want that right down the middle.
I did a tournament with Tony V.
Is he good at golf?
Yeah. No. But he's so much fun.
He looks like
We had so much fun.
Sure.
I've never laughed as hard as I've had on a golf tournament with Tony V. Yeah. And I was hitting good enough that I would kind of carry in, the game from time to time.
Yeah.
I don't want to brag. I'll never be great. But
golf is one of those things you have a shot like Tiger Woods. That gets you out there the next time.
If you have one good shot, it brings you back.
Of course. Yeah.
Outside of that, it's such a stupid game.
It really is. I mean, it is stupid when you really think about it, and the amount of money and space that it requires and hours, it's like a 5-hour, 5-hour thing. But hey, Woody, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate this. This was great. I'm looking forward to having you on again to talk more about this and delve deeper into this, because I think that everybody is touched by somebody with addiction, whatever it is. It's not just drugs or alcohol, but alcohol, people are functioning with that, but not. It's just hard. Life is difficult. Sometimes these escapes are easy to be lured into. And thank you, buddy.
No, thank you. Thank you, Chuck. I really appreciate what you're doing here. And I'm a licensed therapist in Massachusetts, so if someone needs help. I'm also a board-certified interventionist licensed by the Pennsylvania Board for interventions, which is something I love doing.
Yeah.
Absolutely love doing it.
It'll be a 4-hour show like you guys.
There you go.
But thank you, my man.
All right, man. Good stuff. Thank you, Chuck.